Thank you for having me. I'm Tina King from Michigan State University, and this research is the one I have done last summer when I was a library science graduate student. Now, I graduated last summer, and I became a science librarian at Michigan State Library. So nowadays, science becomes more collaborative and data intensive. So libraries carry the role of the collecting and managing and curating the science data. So let me introduce the data stewards. We are 4 library science students. We have no experience of how to deal with the legacy research data. And we have few research data management resources. We have 0 budgets. Well, and we look at online literature. We find a lot of information about the planning or the theory of how to deal with the data. But we want to know what's a specific plan and what is the case study about how to deal with public health research data. So this research is to give you a very specific and very detailed way to how to treat with the public health data. And the library nowadays is working, has his very special position on campus. They can handle the IT service, they can handle the subject specialist. So the library carry the role of doing the research data. So our the group of the library science students are working to develop the way to handle the data with different subjects. So the public health data is one of the special subjects we are working on. And then we have all the knowledge we learned from the data management is from the online resources. We have studied the free online workshop and webinars. And we also find that there are a lot of the certificate-based or degree-based education online, such as the University of Arizona DG Graduate Certificate, UIUC Digital Curation Specialization, University of North Carolina Data Curation Postmaster Certificate, and the University of Minnesota Data Management course modules, as well as data management course at Wayne State University. So the data set is from a retiring public health professor. She gave us her whole lifelong research to us. Those data are from back to 1970s, 1980s, and early 1990s. For all the ethical practices, we call the researcher Dr. Smith. So it's a legacy research data set. Luckily, we don't receive all those floppies or the hard drives. So we research the data as a zip file. So all the data has been digitized. So we research all the data from zip file. So this data set contains 856 data files, 15 folders, and each folder has 2 to about 500 files, and 2 descriptive documents. Those descriptive documents, one is from Dr. Smith, who created a Word document to explain the content and the name terminology of those data file. And the other file is the other document is from our one of our librarian who has interviewed Dr. Smith about how to generate the data and what's her habit to organize all the data. So those data are very before the computer age, and some of data are the public health involved the human capital. So that's a legacy research data. When we research the data, when we look into those data files, we figure out, you see here is the data ends with the DAT, taxi, those numbers, or those no meaning of what is the English words. And we encounter the difficulty. First one is the software compatibility. So the data is back to 1990s, early 1990s. It's very early of the computer age. And some of the data are run by SPSS software. So we have no knowledge about this software. We are not some statistics specialists to deal with the software. And those software are run on Unix. So we know nothing about Unix. So the librarian are not expected to know all the subject knowledge about specific software or specific systems. And some of the data are from the survey Dr. Smith has done. The survey is spanned from different languages, different countries, work with different persons, and spanned from different years, of course. And then we don't know how the data link to the survey and link to a certain publication, and how the data link to the software, because the SPS software, they need certain input data, output data, and the actual data that is from the survey. So those linkages are kind of important in this study to explain how we handle the data and how to make it reasonable. Also, from the hobby of Dr. Smith, she handled the data or named the data with different ways. For some of the name we can understand or access from the interview of her, or from our viewing some of the out data, the info data, the input in data, we can understand. But some of the data we can not understand the name of the data, such as the numbers or the other without no extension. And because the data is back to many years ago, and some of the data are lost. Some of the data have been lost, and some of the data has been missed. So the data is not complete sometimes. So we have difficulty to put into the software to actually run the data, and we have no information to read the data. Although we can read the data from the notepad, but it doesn't mean anything from notepad. After we develop basic understanding of what the data are, so we run into 3 issues of handle the data. The first issue is the organizing the data, and the second is the providing the context of the data. The third one is the storage and access the data. During the process, we ran into the Indiana University IT department and the math statistical department. We asked them question about how about SPS software compatibility from the newer software to the older version of this software, as well as the cost, how much the cost if we spend a certain amount of data, and if we are going to do the data, the legacy data in future, so what's your suggested format of do the data nowadays to save for future? So with those question and answers, we ran out this organizing and providing text. We think about the metadata options. We decide to use the math and the doubling core option, doubling core metadata, because they are widely used. They are compliant with other institutionally repositories. And to run those metadata, we choose to use the CSV and XML data platform because of extensibility. Then next, we run a problem that shall we change the name of the folder? Shall we change the name of the files, or shall we keep all the data? Because the data really from the very old days, we have no knowledge to access the data for now because of the technology issue, and we have no reason to delete any of the data. So we decided to keep all the data. When you see the files, we find out the SPSS software need to handle the data file, need to specify data file as the input and output to run the software. So it's kind of not our option to change the data file because cannot be run on the SPSS software. So we decide to not change any not change on any of the data files, the name of the data files. The next level is our data folder. So we decided to change our data folder because the original data folder was not accessible or not manageable for the public access. So we changed our folder as this. The folder name, the original name, the source format, so along with the questionnaire and the data files. So that's the way we change we're trying to link the data from the data format, the source, the questionnaire, and the publications to make it reasonable for the future to public users access. Consider we are doing about over 800 data files. So we need to learn some toolkits to how to change a large amount of data file. We found a toolkit is very useful from the Purdue University and UIUC. It's called Data Curation Profiles, DCP toolkits. So we use these toolkits to change a large amount of data files. The next problem is storage and access. Indiana University has an institutional repository. So our first recommendation is to use institutional repository because it's centralized and it's basically free to everyone and everyone can access it. If the institutional repository is not an option, we will recommend to use the institutional server, and the server scattered into the different departments in the university or the department. No matter what kind of institutional repository or institutional server we use, we highly recommend to back up the data in other server, to use two different technologies. For example, when we want to back up the data in the cloud storage, and we want to save the data in the institutional repository. The next thing is the access issue. Because this data is public health data, so it has involved human capital. We want to make it fully publicly available, although we want to make it available. So we will consider the copyright as decided by the author. So we will consult with Dr. Smith about confidentiality about access of this data. If the author consulting with the author is not available, we will recommend to go to the university ethics office to ask about access issues. After we finish this project, we make recommendations of those of the future public health research data management. First recommendation is the education. Nowadays, the data management courses are not widely taught at the library science graduate school. Although there are some courses outside, but we are recommend to start education with the data management because the library is playing the days of make the collection not about the physical collection, but also the digital collection or the historical digital collections. For example, MIT data management guideline is a very good source to conduct the data curation education. The other side is the second one is the documentation. We recommend future research to make the basic guideline or standard to do the data curation, legacy data management curation. And the second one is the leverage existing resources. We want to collaborate with the campus IT department and the statistical math department, and the subject-specified department to work together with the legacy research data and to make it more accessible in future. And the licensing and access. Our library wants to save the data if it is not public accessible. Why we should keep it? And the last one is sustainable policies. We want to work to the institutional level to work with the higher level to make the policies to make the data sustainable in future. The next slide, I want to talk about little thing about what is happening at Michigan State University. We have digital scholarship collaborative team work together to solve multiple data curation projects. Here we have not only we have 2 new digital humanity librarians. We have the open access and the scholarly communication. We have the copyright office. We have data librarians. We have geology librarians. We have science librarians. So we try to connect the different from the IT service, the data department, and the science and the humanity and the social science work together to group a team to cater our data service to different subjects. So this is my reference, and that's all.
Do you have questions?
Yes.
Hey, you said you were the science librarian?
Yes.
Like a liaison kind of role? So what exactly is your role with regard to like more of the hands-on or technical parts of curation?
Okay. Yeah, I'm a chemistry librarian. My primary role is to liaison to the chemistry department. But for nowadays, the science creates a lot of data, such as this public health data. And in the chemistry department, they create a lot of data about, they generate from the machines, they generate from the historical data. So it's highly demanded in the science field who needs some data curation. And also, I have received the request of their data plan for their grant proposal. So that's another field we should deal with the data. Yes.
I appreciate that you mentioned a certain amount of volume of files that have no extensions whatsoever, because that is a really common issue.
Yes.
Do you have any plans to deal with that and some of the other extensions that you don't have software for at this point?
Yeah, of course. Those historical legacy data, back to many years, we have some of the extension we have no way to to read the data or to access the data. But it doesn't mean if we put into the accessible in public, no one can have the software to access the data or to solve the data. Because consider our IT service on campus and the budget we have to purchase the old software. Right. So we just decided to leave it here and make it public to let other person to access it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, have you thought of outsourcing these type of services? I'm asking you that. I'm making right now an internship at the ICPSR. And I don't know if the university, the state university, belongs to that consortium, but I'm going through the process behind all the data curation, and I know it's really hard. Yeah, as you said, you need to use Unix, SPSS, and I don't know how challenging can be really, for a library to process all those research data instead of outsourcing them. So I would like to know if you have thought, or you know personally, but the university in a more global realm, if they have thought about outsourcing that, making sure that you keep all the data. You are the owners of the data, but there is someone who really takes care of the process of, changing formats to make sure that people can read those things. So
Yeah, we because for the regular data it's okay because this data is public health data. It really involves some human subjects. So it is we try to avoid to other people who want to get into the data because the data is kind of part of the data is confidential. So we really want to keep our capacity into the library to deal with the data. That was the researcher originally wants.
So you mean that the biggest concern is privacy? I mean confidentiality of the data?
Yeah.
In order to provide that to like an external repository, you mean? Is that the main concern?
External repository, we do have an institutional repository, so it's okay to save those data. So external repository, we can consider that for other subjects.
Thank you so much.